to the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Mckern. Join us weekly for tales of cursed media, haunted web series, ARGs, creepypastas, unfiction, and all things horror. Sit back, dim the lights, and welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave. How Madame LaLaurie turned her New Orleans mansion into a house of horrors. Article by Serena. Inside her New Orleans mansion, Madame Delphine LaLaurie tortured and murdered untold numbers of enslaved people in the early 1830s. In 1834, at the mansion at 1140 Royal Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans, a fire broke out. The neighbors rushed out to help, offering to pour water on the flames and help the family evacuate. However, when they arrived, they noticed that Madame LaLaurie, the woman of the house, seemed to be alone. A mansion without slaves seemed shocking, and a group of locals took it upon themselves to search LaLaurie Mansion. What they found would forever change to the public's perception of Madame Marie Delphine LaLaurie, once known as a respectable member of society, and now known as the savage mistress of New Orleans. The rumors have muddled the facts throughout the years, but there are a few details that stood the test of time. First, the group of locals found the slaves in the attic. Second, they had clearly been tortured. Uncorroborated reports from eyewitnesses claim that there were at least 7 slaves beaten, bruised, and bloodied to within an inch of their lives. Their eyes gouged out, skin flayed, and mouths filled with excrement and then sewn shut. One particular disturbing report claimed that there was a woman whose bones had been broken and reset, that she resembled a crab, and that another woman was wrapped in human intestines. The witnesses also claimed that there were people with holes in their skulls and wooden spoons near them that would be used to stir their brains. There were other rumors that there were dead bodies in the attic as well, their corpses mutilated beyond recognition. Their organs, not at all intact, were inside their bodies. Some say they were only a handful of bodies, others claimed that there were over 100 victims. Either way, it cemented Madame LaLaurie's reputation as one of the most brutal women in history. However, Madame LaLaurie was not always sadistic. She was born Marie Delphine McCarty in the 1780 in New Orleans to an affluent white Creole family. Her family had moved from Ireland to then Spanish-controlled Louisiana a generation before her, and she was only the second generation to be born in America. She married 3 times and had 5 children, whom she had said to tend to be lovingly. Her first husband was a Spaniard named Don Ramon de Lopez Yingulu, a caballero de la Royal de Carros, a high-ranking Spanish officer. The pair had 1 child together, a daughter, for Flores' untimely death in Havana while en route to Madrid. 4 years after Don Ramon's death, Delphine remarried, this time to a Frenchman named Jean Blanc. Blanche was a banker, lawyer, and legislator, and was almost as affluent in the community as Delphine's family had been. Together they had 4 children, 3 daughters and 1 son. After his death, Delphine remarried the third and final husband, a much younger doctor named Leonard Louis Nicolas LaLaurie. He was not often present in her day-to-day life and mostly left his wife to her own devices. In 1831, Madame LaLaurie purchased a 3-story mansion at 1140 Royal Street in the French Quarter. As many society women did at the time, Madame LaLaurie kept slaves. Most of the city was shocked at how polite she was to them, showing them the kindness in public, and even manumitting 2 of them in 1819 and 1832. However, soon rumors began to spread. The politeness exhibited in public may have been just an act. Though New Orleans had laws, unlike most of the southern states, that protected slaves from unusual cruel punishments, the conditions at the LaLaurie mansion were far from adequate. There were rumors that she kept 70-year-old cook chained to the stove, starving. There were others that she was keeping secret slaves from her doctor husband to practice Haitian voodoo medicine on. There were other reports that her cruelty extended to her daughters, who she would punish and whip if they tried to help the slaves in any way. Two of the reports are on record as being true. One, that a man was so scared of punishment that he threw himself out of the 3rd-story window, choosing to die rather than be subjected to Madame LaLaurie's torture. The 3rd-story window was then cemented shut and is still visible today. The other report concerned a 12-year-old slave girl named Leah. As Leah was brushing Madame LaLaurie's hair, she pulled a little too hard, causing LaLaurie to fly into a rage and whip the girl. Like the young man before her, the young girl climbed out onto the roof, leaping to her death. Witnesses say LaLaurie burying the girl's corpse, and police were forced to fine her $300 and make her sell 9 of her slaves. Of course, they all looked the other way when she purchased them all back. After Leah's death, the locals began to doubt LaLaurie even more than they had already. So when the fire broke out, no one was surprised that her slaves were the last to be found, though there was nothing that could prepare them for what they had found inside. After the slaves were released from the burning building, a mob of almost 4,000 angry townspeople ransacked the home, smashing the windows, tearing down doors, till almost nothing remained but the walls outside. Though the house still stands on the corner of Royal Street, the whereabouts of Madame LaLaurie are still unknown. After the dust settled, the woman and her driver were missing, assumed to have fled to Paris. However, there was no word of her ever making it to Paris. Her daughter claimed to have received letters from her, though no one had ever seen them. In the late 1930s, an old cracked copper plate was found in New Orleans' St. Louis Cemetery, bearing the name LaLaurie, Madame Delphine McCarthy, LaLaurie's maiden name. The inscription and plaque in the French Quarter claims that Madame LaLaurie died in Paris on December 7, 1842. However, the mystery remains as whether records located in Paris claim that she died in 1848. Despite the plaque and the records, it was widely believed that while LaLaurie made it to Paris, that she came back to New Orleans under a new name and continued her reign of terror. To this day, the body of Madame Marie Delphine LaLaurie has never been found. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of The Wicked Webs We Weave. I am your host, Ryan Mckern, and until next time, au revoir.